There are a few ways to solve quadratic equations. A quadratic equation just means that there's an x squared term. You have to use some special methods to solve this because of that squared term. The first way is where you just take the square root. You can only do this when there's just an x squared term, a constant, but no x term. You can also factor an equation to find its roots, but that only works when the constants can be factored out. The only way that you can always solve a quadratic is with the quadratic equation. If you're ever stuck on a problem, you can just remember, you can always use that formula. The formula is just something you have to memorize, but if you write it a bunch of times, you'll be able to remember it. It's just negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So what's a, b, and c? A, b, and c are just the coefficients in an equation. Here we have y equals 3x squared plus 6x minus 2. A is 3, b is 6, and c is 2. They go in order. If we plug those values into our quadratic equation, we'll find the roots of our quadratic. Let's try it. Here we'll have x equals minus b, here that's 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, minus 4 times 3 times 2, and all of that is over 2 times 3. We can simplify that to x equals minus 6 plus or minus square root of 12, all over 6, which simplifies to x equals minus 1 plus or minus square root of 3 over 3. If you plug that into a calculator, it's about negative 0.42 and negative 1.58. You can always check your answer if you plug those roots back into the original equation. If you get that y equals 0, then you got the right answer. So that's a good way to check your work. Quadratics come up in physics sometimes when you're dealing with projectile motion. Let's look at an example. During practice, a softball pitcher throws a ball whose height can be modeled by the equation h equals minus 16t squared plus 24t plus 1. Where h is the height in feet and t is the time in seconds. How long does it take for the ball to reach a height of 6 feet? So the first thing we should do is plug that 6 into our equation. That's our known. So we can write 6 equals minus 16t squared plus 24t plus 1. We want our quadratic to equal 0 so that we can solve using the quadratic equation. That means that we should subtract 6 from the left side to get 16t squared minus 24t plus 5, all equal to 0. Now we have a problem that looks like any other quadratic. We want to solve for t, the time in seconds. This time we can find our roots by factoring. This simplifies down to 4t minus 1 times 4t minus 5. Remember that that's just the same when you multiply it out as the one before, 16t squared minus 24t plus 5. Now we set each of these factors equal to 0 to solve for t. 4t minus 1 equals 0, so 4t equals 1, t equals 1/4. The other factor is 4t minus 5 equal to 0. Add the 5 to each side, and you get 4t equals 5, and t equals 5/4. Now we have two answers, so what does that mean? It means that it took the ball a fourth of a second, 0.25 seconds, on the way up to reach 6 feet, and 1.25 seconds on the way back down to reach that height again. If we think about a parabola, we remember that the graph is like a giant U, or you can think about a ball being thrown up, just like the softball pitcher threw it. If we have time on the x-axis down here, 0.25 is before 1.25 on the x-axis, right? So it went up at 0.25 seconds and it down at 1.25 seconds.